It's gonna make me sneeze. Or not. It's so hot in here. Whew. Hello, welcome to Moonbelly Makes. My name is Katrina. Welcome to my kitchen, and welcome to the 5th installment of a project that goes by many names: Bake Along with Bake Off, or Katrina's Great British Baking Project, or in this case, why are you even making that? For more details about this project that goes by many names, I have my blog post that explains everything linked below, but basically I am just recreating the bakes from the Great British Bake Off because I want to learn to become a better baker and they look amazing. Today's bake comes to us from episode 2 of collection 5, which is called Biscuit Week. A biscuit in the UK is a type of cookie that is kind of like on the crunchier side, whereas what they would call a cookie is more of like a chewy cookie, and in the US we just call them both a cookie. So this is Biscuit Week for snappy cookies, and this technical challenge was for fortune cookies. I literally never would have considered making a fortune cookie if it weren't for this, and I'm pretty glad that I have gotten the chance to try them because obviously there's a lot to be learned here. These are unlike any fortune cookie I have ever come across. I do not think that there is any layer of authenticity to these. A little bit later on, I'll share with you a little bit of research that I did about the history of the fortune cookie. From that really basic research, I did not find anything that looks like this, but nonetheless, this was the challenge, so this is what I am doing. I will rate myself at the end and how likely I am to bake this again. So stick around for that part. This challenge was set by Paul. This was his challenge. I took some notes about this. So the bakers had to make 12 fortune cookies, 6 almond cookies, and 6 orange patterned cookies. Each cookie must contain a fortune inside, and they had 2 hours to do it. What they're looking for is a good orange color on the orange ones, good flavor, because I don't think they told them exactly how much flavoring to put in, and a good snap so that the cookies didn't bend, but they cracked open like a fortune cookie should. And Paul's advice, are you ready for this? So helpful. Don't fold under the pressure. Literally the least helpful thing I could possibly imagine. But anyways, here's how I did. For the technical challenge, the bakers get a pared down version of the recipe that leaves out key details, and they have to use their expertise and intuition to make the bake go successfully. I am not giving myself that part of the challenge, and I'm using Paul's actual recipe for these fortune cookies direct from the Bake Off official website, which is linked to my blog post that you can find in the description below. I started by separating the 2 eggs. Eggs separate better when they're cold, so I made sure they were straight from the fridge. The egg whites went into the bowl, and I didn't need the yolks for this recipe, so I saved them and I actually put them in some ramen later. This is granulated sugar, but the recipe called for castor sugar, which is slightly finer but not as fine as powdered sugar. It might have been just okay to use this granulated sugar as is, but I didn't want to risk it, so I popped it in the food processor for a few moments until it looked like this. While the food processor was out, I also chopped up some hazelnuts that will eventually go on the almond flavored fortune cookies. Okay, now that all the ingredients are prepped and ready and literally processed, I'm going to start making the dough, or batter. It's batter. Is it batter? Dough. Paul calls it dough, so I'll call it dough. It's cookie dough, it's not cookie batter. Yeah. Whisk the egg whites, vegetable oil, water, blah, 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 blah. Okay, just smooth batter. Oh, he calls it a batter. This is gonna use a lot of bowls. Okay, I'm just stalling now. I need to actually do this. To the egg whites, I added vegetable oil and whisked until, quote, frothy, but not aerated. Then I sifted together the dries, which were flour, baking soda, and a pinch of salt. If you want the amounts for everything, I linked Paul's recipe in my blog post. After a good mixing, I gently added the dries into the wets. Then I separated out half by weight, so I had 1 bowl for each flavor. Okay, I think the consistency of the dough batter looks really good, and now it's time to flavor them. So I'm going to put orange flavor in one and almond flavor in the other, and I'm gonna move this bowl like very, very far away so I don't get confused, and I'm just gonna start with the almond ones. This pause was me looking at the recipe to make sure I was putting in the right amount of extract, which I was, so I mixed it up with a spatula, trying to not mix more than necessary. As I'm mixing this, I'm realizing I couldn't get confused about which one was which once I put the extract in, even if I wanted to, because it's very pungent. It's gonna make me sneeze. Or not. but it's very, very pungent. So a teaspoon of extract is a lot for 134 grams of batter. So the almond batter is done, and now I'm going to bake off my first one or two. Questioning if I feel confident enough to do 2 at once, but I think I can. The oven is ready. It's at 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a pretty low oven, which is why these take a little bit longer. They're actually gonna bake for 10 to 12 minutes, which for a really thin cookie is a very long time, but it's because it's at such a low oven. It's a low and slow approach. I think that probably the most important part of this bake is the silicone mat. I use these all the time because I roast things and bake things all the time, even like not sweets, baked goods, but like I do a lot of roasted vegetables, toasted. Well, I don't usually use them for toasted nuts, but they're really good for vegetables. Obviously really good for making cookies and things like that. And I actually have 2. These are my savory ones, the gray ones, and these red and white ones are my sweet ones because I started realizing that my cookies were tasting like garlic because I would roast vegetables on these. And I did every hack I could find. Like I soaked them in baking soda and vinegar. I did that. I soaked them in just vinegar. I soaked them in, I can't even remember. I don't know. I did a lot of things. So anyways, savory ones, sweet ones, I recommend that because then you don't ever have to worry about it. Just tell the people that you're living with which one is which. All right, this is again me procrastinating, telling you about something that's really not totally important for the moment when I should be scooping batter. Okay, so it says to do 2 to 3 tablespoons. No, that's something else. 2 tablespoons of almond batter on a silicone mat spaced well apart using the back of a metal spoon, this one. Swirl the mixture to form 2 circles, each measuring 9 to 10 centimeters. I need a ruler. There, so in between my fingers. I scooped out 2 tablespoons worth of batter and spread them out to that 9 to 10 centimeter diameter, and they finally went into the oven. I think while this first batch is in the oven, I'm going to set up my folding station, which I'm gonna set up right here behind me. And when the subsequent ones are in the oven, then I can kind of move on to other things and like tidy up a little bit. But I think I need my folding station to be like very on point. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Oh my gosh, I just forgot to write fortunes. That's what I need to be doing too. At least 1 or 2, at least 2 fortunes I have to write. Oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about this. See, in the show, the first step in their instructions was write 12 fortunes. And the recipe that I'm following from the website, the first instruction is heat the oven. So I didn't even write the fortunes. Oh my gosh, and I only have 7 minutes and 45 seconds. That's okay, I can do this. My landing station is set up, so I have a little offset spatula to scoop up the cookies, a little tumbler to use as a glass to kind of fold the cookie over it, you'll see. And then I have my muffin tin to put them in to kind of hold them in shape while they cool. And I know I have a I obviously have a lot of advantages not being a contestant on the show, but one of the main advantages today is that I know how to fold them. I mean, I don't know actually how to do it because I've not done it, but I know how it should be done. And that's just like streets ahead of most of the contestants. I wouldn't have known. Let's check on these. They look like batter that's cooking. Nothing exciting. So I wrote out some fortunes until the cookies were ready to come out of the oven. Okay, this is what they look like. I placed the fortune in the middle, folded it in half, and used the tumbler to create the iconic shape. Doesn't look terrible. Then it went into the muffin tin to cool and harden. As those cool, I'll check on them. Oh my god, my fingers hurt. I'll check on them and see if they seem like they're getting hard, and if not, I'll just make sure to bake the next batch a little bit longer. They're so cute. I have to admit a little bit of confusion here because these have been cooling for a couple of minutes and they are definitely not gonna snap. Like they're definitely soft. I'm a little confused because I feel like the cracking, you see how it's like cracking there? Cracks indicate that they are too cooked, but then the fact that they're not hardening up indicates that they weren't cooked enough. It might have to do with the thickness. Like I think maybe they're a little too thick, but we'll see how the next ones go. there they are. I made 6. I can't feel my fingers. Well, I can feel them. They hurt. This is not a project for the faint of heart. Now it's time to make the orange ones. So I separated out a little bit of batter for the pattern that I put in here, and I'll put it into a bag that will be a piping bag in a moment. And then the rest of the batter here, I'm gonna put in the orange extract and some orange food coloring. The ingredients for this are pretty straightforward, but finding orange extract was not easy. There it is. Walmart came through. I looked at the grocery store near me. I looked at my co-op. I looked at, oh, it smells good. I looked at Michael's, and the only place I could find that definitely had it, that I could go pick it up, was Walmart. And Josh went and got it for me yesterday. Thanks, baby. Teaspoon of this. Ooh, also pungent. And then I'm gonna put in some orange food coloring as well. And I'm gonna do, I learned that you need a little more than, or at least I need a little more than I think. 2 drops. Maybe not, that's too much.
I grabbed a freezer bag and used a knife I had heated up in the flame on my stove to make a small piping bag. The hot knife cuts and seals at the same time. I'd never done this before, and I was so thrilled that it worked so well. The orange ones were a bit more complicated. I piped little dots of uncolored batter around the edges and then dragged a toothpick through the center of the dots to make these little heart shapes. And then these were baked, filled, folded, and cooled in just the same way.
So while that batch is in the oven as well, I decided to do a little research into what the fortune cookie actually is and its origins and how it connects to Chinese food. I mean, I've never had a fortune cookie like this, so I definitely don't think that Paul Hollywood's version is rooted in much cultural truth at all. So I wanted to do a little research, and I found a really cool article on the History Channel. First of all, it has an awesome, beautiful fortune cookie picture, but I learned a couple of things. First, they're not Chinese. They were based on a Japanese cookie, a sesame and miso cracker cookie thing that was folded and sometimes had the paper inside. That's from like the late 1800s, 1870s, 1880s. When Japanese immigrants came to the US, they started making them in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. I feel like I'm giving a book report. And they started to become like more of a thing that would be served with tea starting in the early 1900s. In 1911, a machine was created to automate the process. Around that same time, the flavor shifted and became more sweet to suit American palates. Okay, so like that's how the cookie came to be as it is. But how did it end up with Chinese food? At that time, Americans didn't want to eat Japanese food. We wanted to eat Chinese food. So Japanese people would open Chinese food restaurants and started giving this out at the end of the meal because the Americans expected a little dessert, so it would come with a check, just like maybe some of us are used to. So that's the origin story according to the History Channel. I think it's very interesting, and I will link this article if you want to read it, if you're interested in this like I am.
While the last batch of orange cookies baked off, I melted some white chocolate for the almond cookies. Once that was melted, I just dipped the ends of the cookies in the chocolate and then into those chopped hazelnuts. And I put the 6 almond cookies in the fridge to set up. I folded the last cookies, and finally, my 12 fortune cookies were all done.
That is a plate of cookies. There's some missing because I took some pictures, but there were 6 of each successful. Now I want to try them. Okay, so I'm going to start with the almond one. I can tell already, like just from kind of playing with them, the almond ones are not going to snap. Let's just, I'll just show you that they're bending. Kind of defeats the purpose, right? Give it a little tear. Ah, classic. May the force be with you. Cheers. It's like no fortune cookie I've ever had. Not just because it's not baked well, it has chocolate on it. It's a good chewy cookie though, like I love it. I love almond. I definitely, like if I were to ever do these again, I would not put the chocolate and the hazelnut on them. I think that's just too thick. You see how thick that is? Like, it didn't have a chance. And that's why it's seeming like overcooked and undercooked at the same time. That's my guess. If you know better than I do, then let me know. I had a lot less of the orange, so I was kind of rationing it so that I didn't run out. And I think that it made for a better thickness of cookie, which allowed for it to actually snap. This is for me. This is time to taste. Orangey. Maybe a little too much. Much better texture. Okay, it is ratings time. My likelihood to make this recipe again. Exactly as is, probably not, but they're pretty fun to make. I would absolutely make them again for a party of some kind. I'm not gonna just like make them when I'm craving a cookie because they're a bit of a project and they're a bit painful. My fingertips still hurt. So all of that being said, I think my likelihood of making these again is like a 6. Not because they're bad, but just because, like, as Stacy, I think it was Stacy in the show, she said she considered making fortune cookies like at another time, and she decided they were too much of a faff. I think that means like too much work, too much nitpickiness, way more of a project than she actually wanted to do. And that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, I'm glad I've made these. I'm proud of myself. I learned some things, but they're a bit of a faff. In terms of my execution, I think that the orange ones came out pretty close to perfect. Some of them had a little bit of bend to them. I think that the almond ones, not so great. So I'll say that I get a 9 for the orange ones and a 7 for the almond ones. So I'm gonna give myself a total score of 8. So 8 handshakes out of 10 for execution. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed coming along for this little process, this little project. And if you want to make your own fortune cookies now, you know it's possible. Do you want to do it? I don't know, but it is possible. The bakers had 2 hours to do this. I started, I think, at 11:30. So it took me about 3.5 hours, but I was really taking my time, and I'm also my whole production crew. So this is the 5th installment of my Bake Along with Bake Off project, and the next one is going to be a cookie board game or biscuit board game. So stay tuned for that, and if you want to go back and watch the previous videos, there aren't that many yet, so now's a good time to catch up. So here on YouTube and also on my website, you can find other cooking projects like my own recipes that I am sharing, and then also a whole bunch of DIY stuff, crafting, those kinds of projects. And if you'd like to stay connected, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is also linked down there, or find me on Instagram. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for being here on this rainy day, and I'll see you next time. Bye. It's almond flavored. It's an almond flavored cookie with hazelnuts on the outside. Did you hear it? What I just said?
Almond flavored cookie with almonds on the outside.
No.